Speculation is building over whether former President Trump is moving closer to a 2024 run. It's been in the news forever, basically since he stepped out of office. After he stepped right up to the edge of declaring he's running, in a new interview with New York Magazine, he says, "I've already made that decision, so nothing factors in anymore. In my own mind, I've already made that decision. Do I go before or after? That will be my big decision," referring to before or after the midterms. Niall Stange, White House columnist for The Hill, joining us now. So is former President Trump finally just spitting it out? Or do you see this more as a message to GOP leaders to perhaps wait and see?
I actually take this at face value. It seems to me, Adrienne, that he has in fact decided to run, and he is mulling the timing of that. I know he has had his clashes with GOP leaders, obviously, over the recent months and years, but I'm not sure that, honestly, he cares terribly much what they think when it comes to making these bigger strategic decisions for himself. When he says, "I've made the decision," I do take him at his word. I think he has decided, and I think he's in.
Do you think that there are other potential candidates who still haven't made it official, but will likely either surprise a whole bunch of people, or there will be a lot of Republicans and Democrats who say, "You know what, I knew it all along." Governor Ron DeSantis from Florida. Nikki Haley's a name that's been tossed around, former Vice President Pence, though none of their polling shows that they have a chance against former President Trump.
Yeah, that's right. I do think it will be a multi-candidate field, even if former President Trump declares early. I think there are people who think that he is vulnerable in ways. Obviously, politics always has a large share of very ambitious people who can see themselves in the Oval Office. But one thing I would say about this possibility of the former president declaring his candidacy early is, like him or hate him, I think that's probably strategically the right decision for the Republican primary. His rivals would hope to get in before him and maybe build up a bit of a head of steam. If he is the lead car on the track, so to speak, you have to find a way to get around past him, and that's a difficult thing to do in a Republican primary.
So we have some statistics. This is a New York Times Siena College poll showing, even though President Biden has some of the worst approval ratings right now, I think it's 33%. He's still ahead by 3 points in a hypothetical matchup against former President Trump, if they were to run against each other. In fact, recently, President Biden actually speaking out, saying that he would welcome the challenge if there was a rematch. So what is the consensus here? I mean, is the Republican Party ready for another, I guess, Groundhog Day when it comes to presidential elections?
Well, that's the question, right? And the question is whether President Trump's popularity with Republicans is counterbalanced by vulnerability in a general election, where he's obviously a very divisive character. There's January the 6th and the inquiry there hanging over him. There are potential criminal cases hanging over him. So, look, Democrats would prefer to be competing against the former president than almost anyone else because they feel he's toxic with the general population. But from a Democratic point of view, that's a high-risk bet. I mean, nobody thought he was going to win in 2016 except him, and he did. And 3% is a very small margin, you know,
yeah.
3 percentage points.
Do you have a crystal ball, Niall, where you can look into it and see who potentially could step up instead of President Biden? Because most Democrats, according to recent polling, they actually want an alternative candidate to run for president.
As far as looking into a crystal ball, I always like to do my Mystic Niall thing for you, Adrienne, but I think that the obvious answer would be Kamala Harris, but she can't really compete against a sitting president as vice president. Then the Democrats have difficulty finding who is the really lead candidate on the bench, so to speak. I mean, Elizabeth Warren's been mentioned, Amy Klobuchar has been mentioned, Bernie Sanders. Beto O'Rourke, possibly. I mean, there are a whole load of people, and none of them makes a completely compelling case. That could end up being a sort of a silver lining for President Biden. His approval ratings are so low, he would be very vulnerable if there was a sort of a 2007 Senator Barack Obama in the wings. But there's nobody really approaching that status.
We will find out what 2024 has for our future as a nation and for the presidential office. Niall, thank you. Good to see you. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you too. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.